Hex.
Sorry. Hello and welcome to another adventure in video game land with the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo.
And for your viewing pleasure this week, two massive games starting with Final Fantasy XIII and Battlefield Bad Company 2. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
News time, Hex. 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 Hex.
Good game.
Clues are proliferating online that point to Steam, the digital distribution service, coming to Mac and Linux platforms. The first hint came earlier this year when Steam developer Valve posted job ads for coders with expertise with these boutique operating systems. Now intrepid gamers have uncovered more concrete clues in the Steam client, code fragments and Mac-styled icons built into the software that hint at an imminent cross-operating system leap. A worldwide technical glitch brought PS3 owners to their knees last week. It was a fault similar to that old chestnut, the Y2K bug. Chips in older model PS3s had an internal defect that mistakenly counted 2010 as a leap year. When the calendar rolled over to March 1, affected older fat PS3s thought it was February 29 instead. The result? 24 hours of chaos. Trophies were corrupted, games became inaccessible, the PSN appeared balked. Owners of PS3 Slim consoles were unaffected, and the majority of bugged consoles resumed full function the following day. Mario creating legend Shigeru Miyamoto is set to receive a fellowship at the British Academy Video Game Awards on March 19th. The BAFTA Fellowship will put him up there with Kubrick and Hitchcock, and is the highest accolade the Academy can award. Miyamoto was quoted as saying, "I have been working closely with a number of friends for 3 decades in order to develop fun and enjoyable games. I would like to receive this honourable award on behalf of all these dependable colleagues." Good news for Heavy Rain fans. Details have emerged of a movie licensing deal that's been signed between French game developer Quantic Dream and New Line Pictures. The adventure game could be adapted into a major motion picture, but there's a twist in the tale. The licensing deal was signed way back in 2006, shortly after the first teaser trailer showing off the game's technology was released. 4 years is a long time in Hollywood, and New Line owners Warner Brothers could decide not to proceed with the project.
Brown pants.
Good game.
Battlefield Bad Company 2 once again takes a ragtag team of 4 misfit soldiers into special ops combat. Only, unlike the first game, we can now play on PC with dedicated servers.
Hex, for a moment there, I almost forgot what it was like playing on dedicated servers. The first Battlefield Bad Company was a console exclusive and delivered some pretty hectic destruction action, and it was also the first in the series to really focus on a single-player story. The sequel ups the ante in every respect.
After an exciting jungle prologue, B Company find themselves caught up in an almost war, with the tipping point being a devastating weapon of mass destruction. The structure of the storytelling is slightly different here in that there's only one mission really that isn't linear, and that one is a hub map, so you can expect more Call of Duty moments than Battlefield ones.
Yeah, there's no health stims or respawning. Death means going back to a checkpoint now. And Hex, I felt the combat was like a slow push. You really had to get through these little tough areas that you could tell have been well crafted to give you a good fight. You still had those multiple approaches though. You can try one way, then go another.
Yeah, like if you fail one way, you end up experimenting and prioritising targets, flanking enemies while your squad keeps them busy. Although sometimes I found myself having to backtrack and try and seek out that one goon that my squad failed to hit. They're so crap at shooting, I just don't get it.
Locations vary from lush jungles, snowy mountains and sandy plains. There's a big focus here on particle effects. There's a lot of snow and dust flying all about the place, and eventually you just start aiming for the gun flashes as opposed to the enemies. I don't think it's to high draw distance or anything though, it's just to add atmosphere.
Did you find though sometimes if you sprint forward into a certain level that you just get instantly killed by a phantom sniper? Yeah, I felt like the game wanted you to slow down so it had time to play out a scenario that it had written for that particular level.
Yeah, that happened to me a couple of times, and at first I thought it was a mortar or maybe it was a sniper, but no, I think it's just the scripting of the game. It is a little bit unfair, but like I said, it only happens a couple of times.
This is not good. Hear that? Order!
What makes Bad Company different, though, is that you can pretty much destroy anything in the game, and often you forget this until an RPG or a tank wipes out the wall you're hiding behind, and that reminds you that you can do the same.
There's only two things in this game that actually bug me, to be honest, and one is that every single time you see a tank or there's a helicopter to take down, you just so happen to have an RPG on the ground, and all the weapon crates everywhere make it a bit easy at times. And the other thing is red barrels. You know I don't like red barrels everywhere. It's a lazy way to make explosions, and they just stand out like a sore thumb. Every truck has two on the back of them here.
They are good explosions, though.
Yeah, they are good explosions.
Such a great selection of guns, too.
Yeah, and there's heaps of them, and the shotgun, finally, a shotgun works like it should. There's no, if you're a meter away from an enemy, it suddenly is useless. It just works properly.
Plus, the controls felt perfectly tuned, you know, from the weight of a weapon to its recoil.
I didn't even mind that you don't have to steady the sniper rifle. You could say it's been noobed a little without having that wavering sight, but it just worked.
Enemies will stumble if you shoot them in the leg, but then continue to fight, staggering around, grabbing where they've been hit. They drop with a really satisfying crumble. Some are a bit dumb and stand out in the open, but others will actively seek you out to destroy your cover.
This is a scalar weapon. Beautiful, isn't it?
What was a real shame is the script. It's a big opportunity missed here when everything else is so good that the script is just so boring and the characters are so over the top.
Sweets, this is interesting stuff, man. Don't you want to know how this ends?
You had me at interesting.
Although they do seem to change their mind like the wind. One moment they're like, oh, I can't go on this mission, it's too hard. And then suddenly they're all, yeah, let's do it for America.
I don't want to do this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of inclined to agree with Haggard.
What the hell is wrong with you?
We're out of our league. I think we ought to go. No more shooting trespassers on your porch.
No more biscuits and gravy?
No more Super Bowl Sundays. No more Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. Shit. That's Tor. Get out of the way! I gotta save me some cheerleaders.
But what was with them sandwiching each cutscene with a fade to black? It really broke up the flow.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Sometimes when you're just getting in a Jeep or just a random animation, it goes black. But let's get on to the best thing about Battlefield, which is the multiplayer. And we've been playing it on all three platforms, and whilst the footage we're showing you is from the beta, so it's not the final product and it was only limited to one map, it shows a lot of promise, I think.
It's progressive unlocking, of course, but thank goodness DICE haven't gone down that Modern Warfare 2 path of ad hoc matches. Final thoughts?
Battlefield Bad Company 2 is a game with solid gameplay, fun scenarios, and if the multiplayer is as good as the beta, I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, one of the standout elements of the original was the sound design, and it's just brilliant here too, from the ambience to the gunshot echo. Yeah, what a shame there wasn't co-op, but I mean, I enjoyed it too. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I should clear this with Braidwood.
No. He'll just send some special ops douchebags with pussy-ass heartbeat monitors on their guns instead of us.
Good game. Good game.
Jeff Minter is the most influential game designer you've never heard of. The founder of Llama, he's been single-handedly coding his bizarre creations since the early 1980s. Games such as Sheep in Space, Revenge of the Mutant Camels, Megagalactic Llamas, Battle at the Edge of Time. In case you hadn't guessed, Llamasoft games are unique. While superficially similar to conventional shoot-'em-ups, they're renowned for their innovative gameplay, trippy graphics, and wicked sense of humour. But why Llamasoft? The first inspiration for the name came from a book of mature stories that Minter found in a dustbin while working part-time as a janitor. This triggered a lifelong obsession, first for the virtual laser-spitting animals of his 8-bit shooters. Nowadays, he's got the real thing. The headquarters of Llamasoft is a hobby farm in Wales, where Minter keeps a small flock of llamas and sheep. Llama Soft was founded in 1982 at the dawn of the home computing era. Having taught himself machine code in his wild teen years, Minter launched his career at an age when most of us are still floundering through uni. To a soundtrack of Gary Newman and Pink Floyd, Minter churned out his early classics in quick succession. The relative simplicity of the hardware of the era meant that he could produce a world-class game in months, sometimes in as little as a week. When not revelling in the fantastical, his games would put a skewed take on the banal. The top-down action game Hover Bother put you in control of a portly middle-aged man whose only ambition was to mow his lawn. The catch? The neighbour you borrowed the mower from would also roam the level with menace on his mind. Minter innovated in ways few developers could even conceive of. The world of Ancipital consisted of 100 linked rooms, each with its own unique enemy AI and physics. Gravity was fickle, varying from one chamber to the next. Would the next room see you walking on the walls or the ceiling? You never knew what to expect. Developed in parallel with his games was an increasingly sophisticated line of visualization programs, algorithmically generated maelstroms of form and colour that would be massaged with the flick of a joystick, the perfect visuals for raves conceived before the rave scene even existed. With the dawn of the 16-bit era, Minter developed games for the Amiga and the Atari ST, spearheading the shareware revolution. His greatest hit in this era was Llamatron 2112. It was a blatant rip-off of Robotron 2084, except traditional game villains were replaced by enemies as offbeat as telephone booths and poop-spitting toilets. The turn of the century saw Minter involved in a string of projects that didn't live up to their full potential. He created Tempest 3000 for the Nuon, a graphics chipset that its creators had hoped would be built into a new generation of DVD players. The Nuon flopped. It was only the dawn of the Xbox 360 that saw Minter's fortunes begin to turn back towards mainstream success. In fact, you may use one of his programs every day without even realising it. Minter created Neon, the music visualisation software built into every Xbox 360 sold. Those trippy colours you can make to fill the screen every time you play some tunes, that's Neon. That's Minter. Yet his first actual game for the 360 was highly divisive. Space Giraffe dazzled critics with its innovative take on the classic Tempest game mechanics, yet its unique use of graphics baffled punters. The sticking point? Its key gameplay breakthrough was that it overstimulated the player's eyeballs, on purpose. Cues to impending enemy attack patterns were laid into the tripatronic visual melange, but divining them in practice was about as pleasant as staring directly into the sun. Worse, it sold poorly. A disappointed Minter included an alternate non-blinding colour set in the PC port of Space Giraffe, a reluctant concession to normalcy. For 3 decades now, Minter has relentlessly pursued his own trippy vision of gaming perfection. He likes old-school shoot-'em-ups, he likes psychedelic music, he likes fluffy barnyard animals, and he sees the future of entertainment in the convergence of all three.
Good game.
Ever since the success of Braid, we've seen a few attempts to replicate that winning combo of charming aesthetics and rock-solid puzzle platforming, but no one has really come close to nailing it.
Enter the Misadventures of P.B. Winterbottom, a game that features a unique aesthetic and loads of mind-bending time manipulation puzzles that make it almost impossible not to draw that Braid comparison. In fact, it even features the same hub world.
That's not a bad thing in this case, though, as this student project turned XBLA exclusive has thrown its own unique ideas and charm into the mix.
Yeah, I agree, Barjo. It really is a beautifully made game in its own right. The scratchy Victorian-era style film look is really done beautifully, and PB himself is a great character. I think more main men should feature top hats.
And monocles.
The music is equally as impressive, with some classic tunes that actually reminded me a lot of Banjo-Kazooie. Maybe a bit nostalgic, actually.
It's that age-old story, man loves pie, pie flies away, man wrecks space-time continuum in pursuit of flying pie, pie in turn wrecks space-time continuum to teach man a lesson.
Ah, yes, that old chestnut. But it's the way that it's told all in rhyme in that old silent film style that works so well.
And unique visuals and a surreal game will get you only so far, but where Winterbottom really shines is in its dastardly puzzles.
Yeah, the basic gist of the game is that you can record your actions to create a clone of yourself by holding down the right trigger. You can then interact with the clones by either jumping on them for a boost or whacking them to get a hard-to-reach pie, for example.
It gets complicated very quickly as you have to start dealing with multiple clones of yourself, so it's a good thing the game eases you into all of Winterbottom's new control powers. At first you might think the game is a little bit easy, but then it just adds new elements to keep the gameplay fresh, and heck, some of these puzzles were a recipe for brain pain.
Yeah, but it hurts so good. Most of the puzzles are contained within a single screen, so you can almost always see exactly what you've got to do. Well, what you're supposed to do anyway. Most of the puzzles I was just staring at it for 10 minutes trying to visualize how I could solve it. Eventually though, it just clicks and you experience plenty of those aha moments as you play through. It really is a great little game, Badge.
Yeah, do yourself a favour and don't look at any guides. It's just much more rewarding to work it out yourself. And when you complete the game, which depending on your Time Lord skills may only take you a few hours, it unlocks a whole bunch of challenge modes for each of the 5 worlds. And some of these have just ridiculous time and recording limits.
My only real gripe here is that I wish there were some more crazy puzzles. Most of the story levels only ever let you record one set of actions. Still, what's here is not to be missed if you love a good puzzle. I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Well, you know when you're left wanting more, that a game's onto a winning formula. I loved every second of it. I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
If we had our own clones, we could get to bring us pies.
Good game.
I think I would probably be writing books because I could do it, all by myself. I like the social aspect of doing a game, but giving a vision to 250 people and always trying to adjust yourself and sometimes arguing, saying, no, this is actually what I want. I know this is a good idea also, but this is not where we're going. So sometimes it gets tough. And writing a book, I feel I could be all alone in a cabin somewhere and just writing it, and then eventually give it to someone, say, okay, do whatever you want with it. I'm done. And that also, would like to do it someday.
Good game.
Hang on!
It's back!
Final Fantasy XIII. After a long 3-year wait, it's a simultaneous release on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. After all those hours and millions of dollars, does it live up to the legacy?
The game kicks off in typically perplexing Final Fantasy style. You're introduced to a swathe of characters before you get a chance to get a grip on who's who and what's what. Names, characters, and locations bounce around like shell casings, and there's no chance for it to sink in. It can take some time to understand it all, and the game actually does a pretty poor job of easing you into it.
The fal'Cie running the sanctum.
In fact, the player is actually prompted to use a data log system just to keep their head above water. The data log constantly updates with a summary of the plot so far, has profiles on characters and locations, and explains the general lore of the game world. Now, I don't know about you, Badge, but I don't want to have to read pages of text because the cutscene is incapable of explaining things clearly.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 hours in and the alarm bells were totally going off for me. I still couldn't get my head around what a fal'Cie actually was, which is a basic anchor point to the story. Eventually I figured out there's some sort of weird godlike mechanical thing that likes to hover about doing something, but it's never really explained properly. What happens is the fal'Cie infects some of the inhabitants of the world with a magical mark, which now brands them as Llama. They're then given a focus, which is kind of a mission, and they don't really know what they're supposed to do. And if they don't achieve their focus, then they turn into a weird, horrible mutant zombie thing, and then they're known as a thief.
Yeah, it is a bit hard to get into the groove, but basically about half a dozen or so characters are brought together to pursue a common focus. There's Lightning, a brooding ex-soldier, Snow, the leader of a resistance group, Hope, a young boy who's lost his mother, Vanille, a tween who tags along, Saz, the pilot who is also kind of just tagging along with a cute chocobo chick in his afro, and Fang, the latest game character to sport a hip and happening Aussie accent.
Wow. That's a load off.
I found the first half of the game just exhaustingly linear. You just funnel down this narrow path. It's cutscene, fight, cutscene, and then there's just repeats.
You turn Sith and there's no coming back. I'm not letting it end that way.
There are a few things that I think will irk some old-school Final Fantasy fans. All the trading in the game, you know, buying weapons and accessories and the like, are done through a rather drab menu at checkpoints. So there are no towns or shops with merchants to visit. I know talking to NPCs can be tiresome, but to remove all that stuff entirely?
I like shopping. You only ever control one character during combat, and you can't switch between other members in your party. They're all completely controlled by the AI, and when your character dies, it's game over. I had to shout to the heavens a few Serenity Nows just to stop myself from rage quitting, and heck, this is because it's totally at odds to other Final Fantasy games, and there doesn't seem to be any reason for it other than to add difficulty.
Yeah, the combat early on in the game feels like frighteningly basic, doesn't it? By default, the cursor sits over an option called Auto Battle, and yes, by choosing this option, your character just automatically chooses the appropriate action. I mean, theoretically, you could play the entire game by clicking just one button. But before there's a collective Australia-wide facepalm, as the game progresses, the combat becomes more about deploying an overall team strategy. It's actually less about individual actions.
This is called a paradigm system, and it means you can switch between preset classes for each character during a fight. You can perform a paradigm shift during battle to make one character a commando for melee attacks, one a synergist for buffing everyone up, and one a ravager for ranged spell attacks. Or alternatively, make one a saboteur class for pelting the enemy with status effects, or a sentinel for provoking aggro from monsters and absorbing damage. So basically, you just rotate through these preset class combinations, and it turned out to be quite an intriguing system, I thought.
The game still uses the active time battle system, but it's a little bit different this time around because each move you perform uses up a certain amount of the time bar. A more powerful attack, for example, may use up most of the bar, whereas a simple melee attack can be quick enough to be performed multiple times. Add all this together and you begin to have quite a strategic system, even if much of the micromanagement is automated, like the way your party heals up after combat.
Odin.
Summons are back in the form of eidolons, beings who must first be bested in combat before bonding with a particular character. Under your command, you can select them to use a variety of attacks, like Shiva's strange Wonder Twins style form of a motorcycle.
So weird, which is all very pretty to watch in action, Hex, but I just didn't find the combat that satisfying. It might be harsh to call 13 dumbed down, but I don't understand why they ditched a perfectly good system that was in 12. I mean, 12 was just so compelling and addictive. I don't understand why they left it behind.
Hold on!
Okay.
There's virtually no side questing, nothing like the awesome monster bounty hunts from 12. You just push through the story relentlessly. It is less linear when you make it down to the surface of Pulse, but I don't want to have to wade through hours and hours of dull gameplay just to get to the good bits. The story just takes too long to come together, and it's just not good enough to pull you through.
But it does look great.
Yeah, it's an exceptionally good-looking game. Everything from the kick-ass monster designs to the shiny hair and sexy costumes, it's nicely put together.
Agree, but back to the gripes. What about that ADD camera perspective? I'm trying to walk my character in a straight line, but the game keeps panning me around to look at something pretty, so I end up fighting with a camera stick the whole time to try and look at what I want to look at, like the location of those ident pods.
Yeah, high five to that. How hard is it in this day and age just to get a camera system that works, especially when a game like this has had $1 gazillion punched into it?
In FF13, characters don't really level in the traditional sense. Their weapons and accessories do. You spend the loot that you collect at save stations to enhance the stat boosts that gear gives you. So you're sometimes faced with abandoning a weapon that you've leveled up because you found another one that's ultimately going to be better for you in the long run. I liked that, but I didn't like how your character stats improve using what's called the Crystarium. It's a bit like leveling, except that your abilities unlock in an entirely linear fashion, so you're never going to choose one skill over another. You just unlock the next one in a chain. It felt dull, to be honest.
Yeah, sadly, I have to agree. The Crystarium is nowhere near as interesting as the license board from 12, and it's kind of a throwback to the Sphere Grid from 10, but not even as good as that. And by the end of it, you kind of need everyone to be a bit of a jack of all trades, so you can switch between them. And I think the problem with Final Fantasy XIII is that it takes 20 hours to unlock fully the combat system, and I don't know if everyone's going to be willing to stick with it through all that. It does get better as you go along, and once you reach some of the epic boss battles, your first fight with the Fal'Cie is a doozy. You really start to appreciate that risk-reward system that's taking place here. It is a good combat system, it's just gimped for half the game.
For me, FF13 was just a lot of grinding. The graphics are amazing, but the story wasn't written well enough to make up for the flaws. Instead of a progression for the series, it felt like more of a regression. You know, they've stripped out a lot of stuff and not really replaced it with anything substantial. There are other better RPGs out there, and to be honest, I'd rather play Demon Souls. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
No, it won't be remembered as a classic, but it's not all bad. There is an amazing amount of stuff to read in the data logs if you can be bothered. It's just a shame you kind of have to understand the story. They just need to tell the story better. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Let's have a look. Don't be shy.
Okay.
Good game.
So gamers, did you guess the game for this week?
Of course you did. It was Mystic Quest: A Legend. A simplified Final Fantasy spin-off released outside Japan that was designed to ease players into the world of console role-playing. You played the sprightly adventurer Benjamin, who must travel to Doom Castle and confront the evil Dark King. It was all a bit my first RPG.
Well, sadly, that brings us to the end of yet another good game, but we're already cooking up a great show for next week.
Oh lordy, yes! Kratos is back in one of the most anticipated titles of the year, God of War 3, and he will make us suffer.
Plus, the latest Total War, Napoleon.
We'll be back at the same time next week, but if you want more gaming in your life, you can catch Good Game Spawn Point over on ABC3 Saturday nights at 7:25 p.m.
Don't forget to submit your Final Fantasy hairstyles. Until then, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Barjo out.
So gonna win that competition.
Employees are ineligible to enter. Read the terms and conditions, man. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them.